Alright, so I did our presentation on Disney and the whole franchise behind it.
Alright, so first it's important to kind of look at like the backstory of who made Disney. So Walt Disney was born December 5th, 1991 in Chicago to Irish and German parents. He was a cartoonist for his high school newspaper and took classes at the Art Institute of Chicago at night. So he tried to actually join the army and he was denied, so he went to the Red Cross, for a year before he had to come back. And when he came back, he moved to Kansas City to work at an art studio because he wanted to be a newspaper artist. And there he started like meeting people and artists that would eventually join his company when he founded it. So then his first animation studio was called Laugh-O-Grams. It was a complete failure. They had to declare bankruptcy in like the first 3 years. So then him and his brother Roy moved to Hollywood and founded the official Walt Disney Studios because that's what Roy thought it should be named. So his first animations to produce were the Alice films, but they weren't actually his, but he was producing them for someone else. And then his first actual creation was Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. And then after that, shortly after, he created Mickey and Friends in the movie Silly Symphonies. It was like a short film, that's where they were all debuted. So his first ever picture to be in color and to win an Oscar was Flowers and Trees. And so throughout his entire lifespan, he produced more than 100 films. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs being his first. It garnered $1.5 million and won 8 Oscars, so for 1937 that was a big deal. And then his last movie that he produced himself personally was Mary Poppins in 1964. So then eventually they started to expand the company from an animation studio to a big, like the parks and everything else. So Disneyland was his first one. It opened in Anaheim, California on July 17, 1955. And then a few years after that, they decided to kind of expand into Florida because it was pretty undeveloped, land was cheap, pretty easy. So they began working on Epcot. Stands for the Experimental Prototype Community of Tomorrow. It was basically kind of like his idea of what the future was going to be. It was his last park that he ever saw, like oversaw before his death in 1966. So he never actually saw the park complete. So his brother went ahead and finished the park and it opened in 1971.
So the symbolism of Mickey Mouse. Mickey Mouse has had multiple changes in appearances since he was first drawn up in 1928 for Steamboat Willie. Even though he has gone through these changes, what he symbolizes has always remained the same. It is said that Mickey Mouse represents everything that the Walt Disney Company illustrates. So these are things including fun, dreams, happiness, bringing people together, and he even shows like the magic of Disney itself. Mickey oftentimes reminds us of the memorable experiences we've had at like parks or maybe watching Disney movies or like anything kind of related to Disney at all. And the symbol of Mickey is known to be constant throughout like the world, like even like across like in the like different parks in different countries and between different cultures as well.
Alright, so important part before we even get any further, we want to mention Michael Eisner and the Dream Team. So a lot of people like credit Walt Disney, but Michael Eisner doesn't get enough credit. So in 1984, he became the CEO of Walt Disney, who was actually like a really big name in like ABC. So he had experience with like big companies. He's the one that transformed it from an $8.1 billion enterprise to worth over $80 billion through parks, movies, things like that. So under him, Disney opened Disneyland Paris and Hong Kong Disneyland. Disneyland Paris is actually his like child that he birthed. And then also under them, they expanded the Orlando and Anaheim locations. So they opened up California Adventure and Anaheim. And they also opened up Animal Kingdom and Hollywood Studios all under his direction. If you go on Disney Plus, there's actually a really cool like Imagineering show that actually covers all this and how they made those exact parks.
Okay, so now it starts with the global expansion plan. So the globalization of Disney began in Tokyo in 1983, then came to the European expansion with the new Disney park in Paris. Most Disney globalization was overseen by Robert Iger and Michael Eisner. So as you can see, this is the Shanghai Disney Resorts, Hong Kong Disney Resort, Tokyo Disney, Disneyland, Walt Disney World, and then all the way at the end is the Disney Paris. So international Disney parks. So Disney tailors its parks in various countries to that specific country. So in Hong Kong Disney, local food and music is provided while also having services communicated in English, Mandarin, and Chinese. When building Tokyo Disney, trainees were sent to Disneyland in California in 1980 in January to spend a year learning about park operations. By opening day, about 150 trainees were spent a year away from home to experience America at Disneyland through Disney University. Disney trains their worldwide employees so that they can provide the original Disney experience to other parts of the world, even if there is a cultural twist to it. All Disney parks have one goal, and it's to be the place where dreams can come true for anyone.
Okay, so Epcot stands for Experimental Prototype Community of Tomorrow, like Vanessa mentioned earlier. And so this park was, in its World Showcase, were envisioned by Walt Disney's passion to create a global community where visitors could be immersed into the sights and sounds of the world, and that's just the iconic bowl that is at the beginning of Epcot. So the World Showcase, it's located in Epcot, and it's unique to only Walt Disney World Resort in Orlando, Florida. The World Showcase is unique. It displays 11 different countries: Mexico, Norway, China, Germany, Italy, United States, Japan, Morocco, France, the United Kingdom, and Canada. You can take a Destinations Discover Tour, which is a 4.5-hour walking excursion through the 11 countries. They exhibit 4,000 years of history, culture, and food through their architecture and displays. Each country has its own distinct cuisine, sold in carts outside or in sit-down restaurants. It depends per country, but there's always a lot of options. Each country also has items and merchandise that are specific only to that country and can only be found there and no other place in the world, which is pretty cool. The staff in each country is actually from that country and they speak that language. So if you're in Canada, all the employees on their name tag, it says they're from Canada. I remember one time when I was in France at the crepe cart, they were speaking French to each other and I definitely could understand, but that's just one of the really cool parts of the World Showcase. And so some countries like Norway and Mexico have attractions. Norway is the biggest one, having the new Frozen ride. And so now I just wanted to show you guys some of the countries that are there. And it's just one big loop around the lake in Epcot. So Mexico, Germany, Norway, China, the United States, and Italy. The United States is actually known as Liberty Square. It's very cool. And then the United Kingdom, Canada, Japan, Morocco, and France. I think Morocco and Canada are very cool with their architecture.
Advertising and keeping the brand alive. When it comes to advertising, Disney made 50% of its revenue off of film and product licensing before they created their own merchandise. Although when Disney finally released their first items of merchandise around the year 1933, it created this circle of revenue and advertising. For example, like the revenue of the film and product licensing funded the new merchandise, which then funds the creation and advertising of the new films that they produce, and it kind of went in like a rotation from then on. The merchandise has now been implemented at all the Disney theme parks around the world, and each one has some pieces that are specific to only that location, where like they change from like season to season or holidays or whatnot. And the merchandise also helped to increase the popularity of Mickey Mouse because of like the iconic Mickey ears that you can buy, and increase his influence more than ever. And then the Disney theme song. The song "When You Wish Upon a Star" first appeared in the Disney movie Pinocchio in 1940. It represents wishes, dreams, and magic, which are all things Disney stands for. After the song was so widely enjoyed and praised in the movie, it became the anthem for the Walt Disney Company. It now plays before every film and has been translated into dozens of different languages. This song strings together the different Disney parks throughout the world and is known by almost any Disney attendee. And that's kind of like the picture you see when it like plays in the background before every movie.
I just wanted to add on to Chloe's point of the song too. The fireworks show at the Magic Kingdom has always included that song in some way. And then with the symbolism of Mickey Mouse, whenever you stay at a Walt Disney World resort, and I believe the other ones as well, there's always hidden Mickeys in the hotel rooms. That's always a fun thing for everyone to look for. So Disney stories. We all know a ton of the Disney stories because they're very iconic across many cultures, and it's actually very interesting because Disney's actually a very transnational company because its stories are mostly derived from other countries. So The Little Mermaid is a Danish story written by Hans Christian Andersen, who is a Danish fairy tale writer. Beauty and the Beast, originally named La Belle et la Bête, I don't speak French, was written by the French author Gabrielle Suzanne Barbeau de Villeneuve. The Hunchback of Notre Dame takes place in Paris, but references to a humpback carver were recently found in the memoirs of Henry Simpson, who was a British sculptor working in the cathedral during the 19th century. So it's maybe a little mix of British and French references. Pocahontas is actually the nicer adapted version of a true narrative between the Powhatan tribe and the English colonial settlers in Virginia in the 1500s. The real story is actually much more sad. The story of Frozen was inspired by the Danish fairy tale The Snow Queen, also written by Hans Christian Andersen, but it takes place in Norway. So that one is a mix. The setting is in a different country, but it's also derived from a Danish story, just like The Little Mermaid. The story of Coco originated from Mexican culture in the holiday of Day of the Dead. So continuing, Sleeping Beauty is a mix between an old French, British, and Italian tragedy. It's never really been confirmed exactly which culture it came from. It seems like it's a mix between a French story that came from a British folklore that came from some Italian history. Very confusing on that one, but it's a big mix. Snow White is a German fairy tale written by the Brothers Grimm, so they're the next most popular author that we're going to hear about. Tangled tells the story of Rapunzel, which is another German fairy tale written by the Brothers Grimm, but they translated the story from the French Personette, which was written by Charlotte Rose de la Force. Brave was actually written by American Brenda Chapman, but she does have Scottish ancestry. The movie is set in 10th century Scottish Highlands, but the story itself was inspired by a mix of the German writers, the Brothers Grimm, and the Danish fairy tale author Hans Christian Andersen. The Tale of Pinocchio is from Italy. And then a little fun fact, which I think some people know, but some might not. The Lion King is actually just an adaptation of Shakespeare's Hamlet. So that one you might think came from African culture because of the setting, but it's actually still just British. And then Cinderella came from the French story Cendrillon by Charles Perrault.
So even though the Disney stories, they came from different cultures, Disney did adapt them to make it more Americanized, just to show like it's Disney. So the Disney Mulan is a Chinese girl who went to the army for her father, and she dedicated a lot of efforts into training to defend the Huns, led by Xiang Yu. Mushu is a small Chinese red dragon who accompanies Mulan in her journey at the army, and Mulan, even though she is a girl, fought hard and finished her mission, achieved the American dream. So in the Disney version of Mulan, they emphasized how she trained hard in the army, and they talk about how they won over the Huns. So that's despite of her identity of a girl, and at the ancient times, she still did what she wanted to do. So that's incorporating the American dream into that film. But the actual Mulan is a fictional character from a ballet, and the poem focuses more on the family side and shows the importance of xiao, which is filial piety. I don't know how to translate that. It's a really important concept in China, but I feel in America it's not really a big thing. It's about respecting your parents and being nice to your parents, kind of. And that's the only translation I found for that. And because Mulan went to the army for her father, and that's what the poem was about. The poem didn't even talk about how she trained in an army. It didn't talk about how they won or whatever. family based than like her personal importance in the whole war thing. And Mushu did not exist in the original ballet. He was added to make the film more fun. And Xiang Yu was actually not one of the Hans. He was actually a Chinese emperor. And I think they just took the name of it to add to like the Mongolian people. So yeah, it's very different, the original story. And in terms of Aladdin, he in the Disney film, he was an orphan and he was the diamond in the rough. In the Cave of Wonders, Aladdin resisted all the jewelries except for the magic carpet. That's why the Cave of Wonders fell apart. And Abu is his monkey pet, who is just as good as Aladdin in terms of stealth. Like he stole the princess's jewelry and without even her noticing. And at the end, Aladdin freed the genie and was able to marry Jasmine, the princess, despite of originally being a stray urchin. So the Disney version of Aladdin talks about how he resisted the jewelries in the Cave of Wonders and how he freed the genie, and he had his personal like traits and everything, and he achieved the dream. So yeah, that's the American version. But the actual Aladdin had no authentic Arabic textual source, and it was added to the Book of 1001 Nights, the Arabian Nights, by a French translator in the French version. So it did not exist in like the Arabic tales at first. It was added later on. And he actually dwelled in one of the cities in China, which I found surprising because I thought it was really Arabic and like Middle Eastern, but it's actually like Western China, I think, closer to the Middle Eastern part is where the tale originally came from. And Abu did not appear in the tale, neither did the magic carpet. So in the original story, they talk about how Aladdin, like he was actually trapped in a cave, magic cave by the sorcerer, and he didn't like resist all the jewelries and all that. And the original tale has more of a focus on magic rather than personal resilience in the Disney version. So the American adaptations of international tales. After the adaptations, the American dream is often shown in the core values of the tales, which is the belief that anyone, regardless of who they are, can attain their own version of success. So as from the two examples I showed before, from Aladdin and Mulan, they both achieve their own success, while in the original story it's about something else, like other values that other cultures think is important. But in the Disney ones, they talk about how the dream is achieved. And the coexistence of international tales within Disney, I think, in my opinion, is a reflection of the American society. Well, people of different backgrounds get together. So it's like, because America is an immigrant country, and that's kind of like how Disney also is, because they take stories from other cultures, but they do have like the American like hint on it. So like the Chinese restaurants here is still like American. It's like nothing, but it's like not authentic Chinese food. So like I added, however, Chinese American is still American and not Chinese. So Disney is iconically American.
So everybody knows the castle is like a major symbol of Disney because, like Chloe showed earlier too, that's even illustrated in all of their movies. So I wanted to talk about the different meanings behind all the castles. So Disneyland, the original Disney theme park, houses Aurora's castle. So this is the first original castle, and it's all belonging to Aurora. Disney World is home to Cinderella's castle. That might be one of the most iconic ones that everybody knows just because that is the biggest theme park. Tokyo Disneyland pays homage to Disney World with a replica of Cinderella's castle, but its castle has more spires and a royal throne room. Disneyland Paris has its own version of Sleeping Beauty's castle, but it's twice the size of the one in California with 2 stories, and it even has a cavern where the dragon Maleficent can be seen poking her head out of the shadows. It goes underground. Hong Kong Disneyland used to be another Sleeping Beauty replica until it was remodeled in early 2018. It now displays features from many Disney classics, like a spire decorated with the famous Cinderella carriage and another one with Snow White's poisoned apple. So this one kind of brings a lot more of the Disney things together, and it's really cool because each spire kind of has a different symbol, a different meaning that's very much Disney. So the walkthrough element of the Shanghai Disneyland castle tells the story of Snow White, while the other ones tell the story of Cinderella and Sleeping Beauty, but they all do have this walkthrough element. But the Shanghai one is the largest and most extravagant of all the castles. It has a crystal grotto boat ride that goes underground and takes voyagers through areas where they display different movie scenes from the classic Disney movies. And it's dedicated to many different Disney characters and icons, but some that they mentioned specifically are Tiana, Merida, Rapunzel, Elsa, Anna, Belle, Cinderella, and Snow White. So this castle kind of just pays homage to the entire kind of Disney storyline as a whole, and that's what makes it very iconic. And it's very similar to the fireworks show that they have in Orlando that's called Happily Ever After. It's kind of like a tribute to just all of them, because what they do is, while it's Cinderella's castle, for the show, they light up the castle with a projection screen, and it just goes from different story to story with the different music from different sounds. That is just very iconically Disney. And so we wanted to end with the pictures of the castles, because just like the Mickey ears, this is probably one of the most iconically American symbols of Disney, because everyone knows the castles. So you have Disney World, there's Shanghai Disney. You can see how it's very different from the rest and how it looks like a combination of the different ones with all the different spire tops being different. If you look from a little right from the center, you can see that that's actually Rapunzel's tower top, which is pretty cool. Paris Disney, Tokyo Disney, Disneyland, and Hong Kong Disney. And so this is just a lot of the characters out in front. And so yeah, that is how Disney is iconically American.